go and you see Donald Trump, Joe Biden, there under it would be literally anybody else. So that if you are voting against somebody and you see that, you can say, oh, hey, this right here is exactly what I was looking for.
All right, so tell us, for the record, your first and last, or your first, middle, and last name.
My legal name is literally anybody else.
Okay.
I went to the family courthouse in Tarrant County, and I stood in front of a judge, and I changed it from the name my mom gave me to this one.
Okay, so I asked you earlier, how do I address you? It's Mr. Else.
Mr. Else. Sure. I will answer to all three.
Okay. So let's just talk about this because, I think the whole idea of changing your name, I think you did it in January, correct?
Correct. It was around January 12th, I believe it was.
This is all driven by something else besides, just being different. It's got political, motivation to it based off of what's happened in, the 2020, 2024 elections.
For sure. I believe, one of the triggers to actually make that leap was I was watching one of the debates. And what started out as a joke last year turned into, there really should be some outlet for folks like me who are just so fed up with this constant power grab between the two parties that just has no benefit to the common person. I mean, you have one person who is part of the 1%, wealth-wise, and the other person who's part of an even smaller percentage of just politicians. I mean, he's been a politician for 60-something years? Does he really is he still in touch with, people like me, people like you? That's something, if you're not in it, can you really understand truly what the struggles are? And that's just something, we don't have an outlet to say we're done. Like we're tired, we need something fresh. Like yeah.
So essentially the point is, you're trying to show just with this name change and the candidacy that you're dissatisfied with the current state of politics in our nation.
For sure, and it's not just me. I mean, everybody I've talked to, not everybody, most of the people that I've talked to, have a very similar sentiment. Now, they have leanings one way or the other, but more times than not, I'll run into people who are voting against one of the main candidates rather than for someone they support. They may not like Biden, but they'll vote for him because they despise Trump. They may not like Trump because of his, boorishness or his, lack of hesitation to, criticize people who maybe shouldn't be criticized, or, make fun of the wrong, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah.
You're saying that they don't like his demeanor, but
yeah, they don't like his demeanor.
They dislike Biden.
But they dislike Biden and his policies. And having this be a way for kind of like a focal point, like a beacon for all those people, all those disenfranchised people to gather around to say, hey, out of 300 million people, we can do better. We can do better. It's not necessarily about me as a person, but it's about literally anybody else as an idea. I believe someone told me is like, we don't have a neither option on the ballot. And this kind of fills that role.
So the idea was to say, all right, let's change the name. Let's get, on board with a candidacy here or a campaign.
Yeah.
And the idea is to have President Trump, President Biden, and then can you just kind of
literally anybody else?
Can you state like what your intention here is with the name change and how the ballot should look?
It's exactly that. I mean, we should be able to have the option to vote for people who represent us, not for just the requirement to just decide the lesser of two evils. That's what democracy was supposed to be, a representation of the people, by the people, for the people. And when we're stuck in this tweedism where we're just, oh, hey, these are the two that we give you to choose from, those are your only two options, I reject that. I reject that wholeheartedly. You know, and especially now that we're in an age where information travels so freely, you know, if I want to know, if I want my opinion to be in DC, theoretically, it could happen in seconds. All right, but does anything that we think actually reach up there? I believe Stanford did a study one time when they tried to say, what effect does popularity have on how likely a policy is to be passed or rejected? And they found that it has zero effect until you get into the top single-digit percentages. And that's not representation by the people. That's representation by the special elite, by the privileged few.
But there's a lot of people that feel the way you feel, and your whole idea is, let me get these signatures, let me, you know, try and become a write-in candidate, so that is the option, is, you know, Trump,
Correct.
Biden, and then can you kind of just state what your picture is for the ballot to look like?
Well, for real, like yeah, exactly what you said, to have it so that when you go and you see Donald Trump, Joe Biden, there under it would be literally anybody else. So that if you are voting against somebody and you see that, you can say, oh, hey, this right here is exactly what I was looking for. I do not support Donald Trump. I support Joe Biden even less, or vice versa. I do not support Joe Biden. I support Donald Trump even less. I would rather, and literally anybody else, hold the steering wheel for this country because I don't trust them.
You're an ordinary person. You've served in the military. You're a 7th grade math teacher.
Indeed.
You have some, you know, kind of understanding of, I think, what it's like to be in, like you said, not the 1% or the 10%. And also, you're a college kid who ran out of money at LSU, like you said, and so you went into the military to fully fund yourself. And it sounds like you have a wife. Do you have any kids?
I got one kid. She's 3 years old.
Okay, so I mean,
she looks like she's 5.
So you talk me through that. Is that, you know, your pitch is to try and reach people who are like you, who don't really fit into the mold of, like you said, elitism.
Indeed. I mean, I think one of the benefits that I would offer is that I can connect with more Americans than they could because I have more to connect with. I mean, you look at situations like Donald Trump, and he's this genius real estate mogul, but he was given $100 million for a start by his dad. And that's not anything that, you know, the everyday man can relate to. You know, I've been to the bottom. You know, I've been in a situation where I did not have a residential home to live in, where I've lived at work. All right, and I've went from there to where I am today. Granted, I use the military as like the medium to build myself up.
You know, kind of talking about you know, like you said, we were kind of talking about who you are. You know, that's something that I think that you're trying to get to people. I mean, you were doing it in the AAC Plaza the other day. Kind of like telling people, you said you worked insurance for a bit,
Yeah.
became a teacher, and then, you know, kind of, what's that been like for you? You know, because it doesn't seem like it was incredibly like organic, you know, at the time when you were there, like, you know, seems never done it before. So this is like kind of a new thing.
I mean, if anything, I mean, that's with any position, you know, once you first started something, there's a learning curve. Yeah. You know, most people aren't going to be, you know, the greatest scorer once they first hit the basketball court. You know, but with everything, you know, you learn as you go. You know, and I recognize that both candidates have been in that seat before, and so they have far more insight than I would have about what it takes to actually hold that title. But that, looking at that, I feel like we could still do better. I feel like there are certain things that are just not approached the correct way. You know, we in politics, we like to tackle issues as an either or. All right, and there's just so many ways to tackle a problem that it doesn't need to be so abrasive when they talk about issues. For instance, one of the issues I like to use as an example is minimum wage. You know, you have the Democrats, which kind of lean toward raise it to the living wage, like, or beyond. And that, you know, sounds good at face value, but when you get into the reality of it, the living wage will always run away from where you put the minimum wage. But yeah, the living wage will always run from the minimum wage. And the Republicans are like, we shouldn't increase it at all. In fact, we should decrease it because it gives a more realistic sense. It puts more people working. You know, that's how it goes. There is a third option that like they never talk about. It's like, why don't we focus on policies that take the living wage back down to the minimum wage? You know, instead of doing what the minimum, the minimum wage is intended to be a living wage. But instead of looking at it with that way, we just look at it as a number. We're just trying to throw money at a problem. So let's go to the root of what we're trying to accomplish and focus on policies in that way.
Let's talk about the ballot, because you do have a bit of a challenge ahead of you. And I hope you are okay with me saying tonight my story that you statistically don't have a chance. Like, it's a very, unless you became a household name overnight.
Oh yeah, like I'm under no delusion that this would be an easy battle. I mean, there's like a 0.00001% chance that I could win, but it's not impossible. You know, and again, this is about being a rally or a beacon for everybody who shares the same sentiment. You know, I think there was a Gallup poll that said that either candidate only has about 70%, only has about 30% of the nation.
Yeah, there's an undecided portion.
Yeah, and that's, if either of those candidates win, you have 70% of the country that's not being represented. All right, and if I can tap into any of that in the middle, just at the very least to get the word out. Shoot, I would love to be able to be on the debate stage and then just bring them that reality of, I am here because you two are not enough.
I want to talk to you about the ballots, though, because the 113 that you need, you only have 113,000.
Mm-hmm.
How many do you have presently?
I mean, right now it's only 6, but you can only start once the primaries begin. The way Texas statutes have it is you're not even allowed to start collecting signatures until Super Tuesday.
And that you're 35, so this is your first year of eligibility, too.
It's the first year of eligibility.
I have a question. What do your kids call you in class? Because you're still working as a teacher. You haven't kind of campaigned full time.
They call me by my normal name. I've kind of kept this separate as long as I can. I feel like once this reaches a point, if I do become a household name, like you said, then I would have to bring that in.
Change it a little bit, yeah.
But it's, I try to keep politics out of my lessons. Mm-hmm. And they never really go in. I only ever bring in kind of like those lessons, because like I teach at a Title I school. And what that means is that there's a lot of students who are coming from homes where they're not very privileged.
Right.
And so there's a lot of lessons that, you know, are to be said. You know, make sure that you treat others with kindness, and like don't let others control you with, you know, try to provoke you into doing things that you shouldn't be doing.
Well, I wanted to ask, because, you know, there's a lot of questions about what do you do after November? Do you change your name back to your normal name? Or, like you said, are you waiting to kind of see where the steam gets thrown?
So in November for this year, for sure, like I would go back to the name my mom gave me. I feel like that would be, point one, rude to her to say like, oh, hey, I reject what you told me. But, you know, it's still about getting the message out. I mean, it's still up in the air what it could unfold into. Like I said, like this is uncharted territory. As far as I know, nobody's ever done this. All right, but it needed to be done. There needed to be something for everybody to rally around.
What would you tell voters who feel like you?
Those voters who feel like me? Voters who feel like me, we do not have to choose between the lessers of two evils. All right, we have the option. We have the responsibility to stand up for ourselves and to say, enough's enough. All right.
You would tell them to write your name in, I would imagine.
For sure. Like write the name in. Write the name in the ballot. You know, if you can, you know, tell your friends. Tell everybody you know. All right. Let everyone know that we're not hopeless.